Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So I can honestly tell you that I could make the introduction, my introduction of Rabbi Dr. Donniel Hartman longer than his speech. I will spare you and I will spare him of that. But you know that Donniel Hartman is the president of the Shalom Hartman Institute in Yerushalayim. Their work and their influence goes way beyond Yerushalayim and their institute. There are schools there. There are opportunities for lay leadership throughout the country to learn there. There's a think tank that is part of the institute. Rabbis are trained there, and they're influencing the Jewish world to understand Judaism in the biggest possible categories, in the largest possible way, so that we can actually take hold of a tradition that is not only very ancient, but speaks to our lives and to the world this day. I know that each and every one of us are deeply disturbed by what's going on in Israel. I think we're saddened by it. I know for sure that we're confused about it. But I also think that we are looking for places to hope. Donniel's going to address all of that. I will say no more. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be able to welcome to the Bima once again a very dear friend and a teacher, Donniel Hartman.
Shabbat Shalom. I really like coming here. I have so many reasons I like coming here. First, I love David. It's just as simple as that. I love him and I respect him. But I love and respect what you've created. This is a congregation where Judaism matters. It's a congregation where Israel matters. It's a congregation where ideas matter and where Jewish values matter. And there's no place that I feel more at home to speak because of the framework that you have created. And we have to talk. We have what to talk about. Because this is truly, as we look in our lives, there are certain moments. We don't know what's going to be historical. That we're only going to know very often 50, 100 years from now. But now we know that this is a profoundly momentous time. It is a time that is changing the trajectory, or potentially changing the trajectory of Jewish history. I want to talk to you about Israel. But mostly, I want to talk about your relationship with Israel. I want to talk about your feelings right now. And I want to share with you what I'm feeling. And I want to speak about how we shape our future together. See, Israel and North American Jewry, we have, in essence, have been trying to sustain a long-distance relationship. Now, long-distance relationships are difficult. They're problematic. Relationships assume a certain intensity, a certain significance. Being there. We know that in relationships, quality time is quantity time. So we speak otherwise, but in essence, we know that. In a relationship, are you there? How often do you see? How often do you experience? How often do you feel? And that's why long-distance relationships are very difficult to sustain. But that is in essence what the Jewish world is trying to do, and we're destined to do. And we're trying to do it because, as Blaustein already said in the 50s, America, and by implication also Canada, for Jews who live there, is home. It's home. And the relationship with Israel could only be a long-distance relationship, because moving to Israel, if we're honest, is not a value. It's not. Already at the turn of the century, my family moved to Israel in 1830. That was their second time. The first time was in the 17th century. But by 1920, there were 200,000 Jews. By the formation of the state, only 600,000 Jews lived in Israel. And that's after the Aliyah bump post-Holocaust. While 1.5 million Jews made Aliyah here. So by definition, the Jewish people are a people with two homes. We love each other or want to sustain a relationship. But it is by definition a challenging and difficult one, because by definition it is a long-distance relationship. With all the positives, and there sometimes are, because when you have a long-distance relationship, you could romanticize more, and reality is not as important. But on the other hand, distance does what it does. So we have tried as a Jewish community to ignore the long-distance dimension in the relationship. We in North America have made Israel not an overseas allocation, but an inherent part of our identity as Jews. Look at your Avinu Shebashamayim. Look at the energy, the feeling. Maybe it's trying to compensate a little bit, but what it is declaring loud and clearly is, Israel is mine. Israel is an integral part of my life. Israel is not something that is 6,000 to 10,000 miles away, even though it is. Israel is a part of what it means to be a Jew. It connects me to my people. It connects me to my past. It becomes a focus of Jewish pride, of Jewish responsibility, of Jewish values, trying to create a public sphere. And I'm all in. And so for years, we focused on the relationship dimension. Whether in our Jewish organizations or whether in our synagogues with our flags. But time does something. And it's very hard. When the state was formed, there's an energy. Post-67, there's an energy. Dangers of 73, an energy. The Aliyah of Soviet Jewry, Ethiopian Jewry, there's an energy. Startup nation and seeing and witnessing. And I can tell you as an Israeli, it's remarkable to live in Israel. It is a remarkable country. Life is phenomenal there. And I know we're crazy, but we are officially the 4th happiest people in the world. I know, it's like I'm almost embarrassed, because I don't know if it just means we're insane. You're number 18, Mazel Tov. Last year you were 19. It's moving in the right direction. But I want to tell you, to live in Israel, it's remarkable. Life is wonderful in Israel on so many levels. But over time, it's natural for distance and for some sense of alienation to trickle in. I'm really, really worried. My son decided to rebel against me. And he didn't have to, because I'm a really, really good father. And I've told this to him my whole life. And he decided he wanted to have a North American experience. And I was all for it, on condition that he left the grandchildren with me. And I want to tell you, Zoom, Shmoom, what's up? Not the same. I used to see my grandchildren 3 to 4 times a week. In Israel, a long-distance relationship is between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Walking distance is normal. And you could see, even within a few months, let alone 75 years, it's very hard. But something else has happened. And I want to speak to that, and I want to speak to how you, God bless you, have tried to compensate, but how that compensation is now dangerous. One of the ways in which you sustain a long-distance relationship is, as I said, you try to ignore the long-distance dimension. And the other way is to embrace the long-distance-ness within the relationship. As Israel is not just the hero of Entebbe and the gritty, powerful nation of startup nation, Israel is also the nation of religious legislations that you feel insulted by. Policies that violate the essence of your Judaism. The occupation. And I don't care whether you think there's an occupation of land or not. There's a people who see themselves as a people. And regardless of whether Bezalel Smotrich declares himself to be the only authentic Palestinian on earth, God bless you. There are 7 million people who see themselves as a people, and you know better, and you see it, and you wonder, and you're troubled. We pray for peace, but we're troubled. So what have we done? The secret to sustaining the long-distance relationship, as there is increasing distance, not merely in space, but distance also in values, is through the magic term, it's complicated. I know that I'm not so happy with what's going on in Judea and Samaria, but it's complicated. I'm not there. What do I see? Do I fully know? It's complicated. State and religion, I know I don't like it, but the formation of a government requires Haredim. It's complicated. Successful Zionist education for 2 decades now was to achieve, on the part of those who participate in it, the level of understanding that it's complicated. And if it's complicated, then you could sort of look. It's like watching it from 10,000 miles. It's not great, but it's complicated. And what makes it even more complicated is I'm not even sure what my role is. Could I talk? Who am I? It's a democracy. Shouldn't Israelis vote? Shouldn't I be silent? Why should I talk? Or what right do I have to talk? Or what right do I have to try to shape policy which in a country in which my life is not on the line? Okay, I might want a 2-state solution, but it's complicated. And I might want us to take a risk, but do I really have a right to tell you to take a risk when it is your children who are going to go to war? Your whole standing in the relationship is complicated. And it's true. The last thing I would want is for my children to endanger their lives because of a policy shaped by you. I want to have a relationship with you, but there are limits to it. So the reality is complicated. The conflict is complicated. The demographics of Israel are complicated. Your relationship and standing is complicated. And complicated became, paradoxically, the glue keeping us together. I'm going to take you to a trip, and if you could see that it's complicated, we got another 5 years. Complicated, though, has also created a profound force to intimidate you. Israelis have tried to intimidate you. Scholars, and there are colleagues of mine whose major specialty has been to speak out anytime you speak out, and to train you that if you are a lover of Israel, you have to be silent. You are a lover of Israel, the most that you could claim is it's complicated. That's as much as you could say. If you have a definitive opinion from 6,000 to 10,000 miles away, who are you to have such an opinion? You could have an opinion that it's complicated. Jewish organizations in America and in Canada have trained you not to be so clear, not to be so opinionated, not to be unambiguous. And so, in this long-distance relationship, you have stayed in, and still the vast majority of Jews in North America see a relationship with Israel as a critical part of what it means to be a Jew. But the nature of that relationship is being profoundly challenged right now. Because now, my friends, it's not complicated. It's just not complicated. It's not complicated when the Minister of Homeland Security is a fascist whose primary agenda is to make sure that the non-Jews of Israel understand that the Jews are the masters of the land. It's not complicated within a span of less than a week, our Minister of Finance, not the Minister of 3 trees next to Beit El, but the Minister of Finance of the State of Israel, says, wipe out Hawara. I and my grandparents are the only true Palestinians. There is no Palestinian people. And he speaks in a podium with a map in which Jordan is a part of Israel. Friends, that's not complicated. It's not complicated when certain ultra-Orthodox religious forces in Israel, it even dawns on them to ask or to even think. Women on the wall, women praying on the wall, what are you, nuts? I'm now going to have tznius, modesty police. I'm going to see if you dress immodestly, that could be grounds for a prison sentence. It's not complicated when there are people who think that at this time, the critical issue that we have to deal with is whether a person is allowed to bring chametz into the hospital when they're visiting their family. Really? I don't know if I'm supposed to laugh or I'm supposed to cry. We're going to have to retrain the dogs and the magnometers, whatever it is, instead of picking up explosives to pick up chametz. Like, really? Like, these are the issues of our time? Where they're not just merely interested for support for their own religious ideologies, but they want to determine for the rest of Israel what to do. It's not complicated when the ultra-Orthodox in Israel are becoming Zionists and as a result have an opinion about the whole country, not just about themselves. We have major issues now. Major, major issues. I could go on for quite a while, but I'm not here to depress you. Because there's not a single thing that I have said that you don't know. Thank you. But we have to understand the shift in the discourse. The category, the defense, the glue of complicated doesn't work anymore. It's true, it's complicated. Do we have a peace partner? No, it's complicated. Abu Mazen is in what, the 18th year of his 4-year presidency? And Hamas and Islamic Jihad de facto control all of Judea and Samaria, and what would do, that we know is complicated. But when we have a major party in our coalition whose agenda is to dismantle the Palestinian Authority, to bring the Islamic Jihad and Hamas to the fore so that we can have an overt, clear conflict without any delusion of peace, so that we can ultimately ensure that no single centimeter of Judea and Samaria will ever be rescinded, that's not complicated. So what do? The first thing we do is we have to stop using the term complicated, even though it still is complicated. But not all of it is complicated. But now, I want to shift to the good news. And this is what I'm here to talk to you about. There is a revolution taking place in Israel right now. Not a political revolution. The government did not steal the election. They did not. Nobody is accusing them of stealing the election. Nobody is accusing them of grabbing power in an anti-democratic manner. We have had and continue to have free elections in which everyone could vote for one of 79 different parties and make sure that your opinion is perfectly represented. It's not a revolution to overturn the government. Government is strong, and the government is legitimate. There is a social revolution taking place. And that revolution is creating a new coalition in Israeli society. Not a coalition around foreign policy. That was always our coalitions. Our coalitions were built on one issue and one issue only. Do you share with me your foreign policy? If you do, I'll compromise on some inner policy issues. But it really is only and exclusively coalitions around security. Also, coalitions around economic well-being. And since 2006, the majority of Israelis have believed that the person who most carefully and astutely could guide us through the challenges of security and economic growth is Benjamin Netanyahu. That's the source of his power, a source that he has earned with great care and great responsibility. And people across the political map appreciate that. You don't know this, you might. But do you know that less Israeli soldiers die under Benjamin Netanyahu than under any other government in the history of Israel? He uses power judiciously. He never runs to go to war. When he chooses to go to war, he has a clear exit strategy. And if he doesn't declare it, he just unilaterally declares victory and goes home. That's what he does. And my friends, on the center-left, we know and are deeply grateful to him for keeping our children safe. And he did. But the revolution that's taking place in Israeli society is that for the first time, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Israelis are standing up and saying Israel is not merely defined by the borders, nor is it merely defined by its financial wealth. It is defined by the quality of liberal, Jewish, and democratic values that will determine the nature of life every single day in the marketplace. That's a revolution. When was the last time that you saw Israelis talking about prayer at the Kotel? When? Never. Come to every demonstration and you'll see it. When was the last time that you saw Israelis standing up and saying, I care about minority rights? When? Never. Ever. When have Israeli Jews invited Israeli Arab Palestinians to speak at their demonstrations. When? Never. Now. Every demonstration has an Israeli Arab Palestinian being invited for their voice. When have people spoken about the need to have liberal Judaism and voices of liberal orthodoxy being brought forth in the midst of and in partnership with secular Israelis? When? Never. There's a revolution happening right now in Israel. A revolution that is deeply, deeply connected to your values and the things that you care about. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that this coalition of values, not a coalition defined by right-wing, left-wing, not a partisan coalition between one party and the next, but a coalition which spans left, center, center-right, and a few people on the right. When Miriam Edelson comes out against the reform of the Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen, Miriam Edelson, we are in a different universe. A coalition that's not partisan, but that is trying to ask, what is the Israel that I love? What is the Israel that I'm willing to die for? What do you think is happening when reservists are saying, I'm not going to fight for this? Because as a reservist, as a soldier in the army, it's in my pocket. The spirit of the IDF is a spirit which says, I will fight for this country, and this country is a Jewish and democratic state in which all human life is of value, regardless of your national, religious, or gender identities. Every soldier has this in his pocket, and they are standing up and saying, I am willing to die for this country. Not in theory, I have been willing. I've been doing it day in and day out. And in a few weeks, we're all going to go on Yom HaZikaron to the cemeteries, and all of us have a 0 degree of separation to death. Friends, family, brothers, sisters, parents. I'll die for Israel is not just a statement. In Israel, this is a commitment which the vast majority of Israeli Jews are willing to embrace. Sadly, but we're there. But when the soldiers are getting up and saying, I'm willing to die for Israel, this is not Israel. What you have is a movement reclaiming the meaning of Israel and saying to the government, you might have a majority in the Knesset. You could pass any legislation you want. What you don't get to do is to define my Israel. You don't own Zionism. You don't own Israel. And that's why without any memo and without any plan, people came to the demonstrations from the first moment with flags of Israel. Because this is not a demonstration against Israel. It's not even a demonstration against the government. It's a demonstration for the Israel that we love. And people are wearing their flags like taluses. I am a Jew. I am a Zionist. I am a lover of Israel. And this coalition of people who are marching in the street, together with the individuals who are hitting above their pay grade and above their number, carrying the security of this country, carrying the economic viability of this country, carrying its success, bearing the primary responsibility, are standing up and saying no. And you want to know something? We won. The government, the reform, and I know you had a lecture here, so I'm not going to go into the details. Don't worry. You could breathe. Later I will. Not going to go into the details. The reform in its totality is dead. Even those who advocated for it are publicly saying we're no longer for it. We're for a reform, not for the reform. A coalition of demonstrators, intellectuals, business leaders, investors, Jews around the world, and I'm going to come back to you, politicians around the world, legal scholars around the world, voices that have been incessantly communicating, this is not my Israel. We have won. And even now, over the next 2 weeks, when the government is putting forth one of the 5 stages of its reform, even that is a modulated and moderated version. 64 people in the Knesset could pass any law they want. They cannot, though, shape what Israel is and what Israel will be. The good news is that we won. The bad news is that both powers have sufficient power and ability to work independently without possibility or even a need of compromise and resolve. It's not only this, there's 2 moves taking place. Both are so powerful that we're going like this, but we're also going like this. How it will be resolved, nobody knows right now. It requires a certain leader, which it seems we do not have. But that, again, is not what I want to speak about. Now I want to speak about you. For years in Israel, anything you said was ignored. We made a religion of ignoring you and lying to you. We'd call you leaders, let you meet on any mission with anybody you wanted to, from Herzog to the Prime Minister to the Minister of Defense. Every North American group could come and have access to, because you are our leaders. And then your job is, in return for having access, is to basically support and be quiet. Oh, and if you were critical, you were only critical behind closed doors. In Israel, there are no, outside of the Jerusalem Post, reporters for diaspora Jewry. You're not a story. You know when your lives appear on the front page? 2 moments. Anti-Semitism. When there's an anti-Semitic attack, front page news in Israel. Because it reaffirms the fact that Zionism is the only place that Jews should be. Charlottesville, oh, what are we going to say? He said, what do you mean? Make Aliyah. I told you. So, we want to know about your anti-Semitic experiences. We study them, and in a perverse way, enjoy them. We also love, in Israel, we love intermarriage. There is nothing that we love more than your intermarriage. I told you, it's the second Holocaust. We could laugh about it, but it's true. Zionism and Israelis have for decades built a long-distance relationship in which they demand your support, but do not believe that you are partners and certainly aren't worthy of respect. Ladies and gentlemen, that is no longer the case with the current coalition. When was the last time that in an Israeli demonstration a leading North American rabbi was invited to speak? Just 3 weeks ago in Tel Aviv. Every single petition that you sign, every single demonstration that you go to, every single Jewish organization which comes out with a condemnation, every one of them today is in the front page of Israeli discourse. Israelis recognize that this is not about policy, and this is not about foreign security and military issues. This is at the heart of Israel, and that issue is yours just as much as it is ours. And your voice is heard. How do you make a difference? For years, there was only one way for you to make a difference, or 2 ways. One was to support institutions who care about the Israel that you care about. That's one way. But that is a path only open to people with financial means. The other way was to express your agreement and support for the legitimately elected government of Israel. Today there's a new way. Or, more accurately, we need to create a new way. I have been demonstrating every single Saturday night and every single Monday at the Knesset when they're declared. I don't go to the illegal demonstrations. It's not my style. I am more excited about Israel today than I have been in decades because I am speaking. I am a player. You also can be a player. Now, individually, it's very, very hard. Very hard. Now, you could write, you could use social media platforms. There's multiple ways for you to get your voice out there. But North American Jewry needs to coalesce around its synagogues and its federations, two of the primary organizations that actually have constituencies. Not organizations that only have leadership, organizations that have constituencies. And if across North America right now, there are hundreds of synagogues and federations, if we created a map where every 4 weeks, and we know across the country, every Saturday night, every Sunday afternoon, 20, 30 synagogues and communities are demonstrating. In Israel, we no longer just demonstrate in Tel Aviv. Every city is demonstrating, a sum total of people. Not a demonstration against the reform, not a demonstration against Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, but a demonstration for the Israel that you want. Let your voice be heard, and I want to tell you, Israelis are hearing it. Your coalition partners are no longer who is in the government. You have coalition partners in the street who are marching, need your support, listening to it, and want it, and will benefit from it. Do you care about Israel? Well, let your voice be heard. If you don't have a voice, you could do anything. Create it. Create a list of synagogues around the country, and you can even put each other where it's not you alone. 200 people here, 200 people there, 10,000 people every Sunday, week after week, not once. We don't do it once. We don't miss a demonstration. I'll miss davening. I won't miss a demonstration. Because this is my country. You need to have that experience. And you can do it. We have won the first battle. The reform in its totality, in its remarkably destructive aspects, is over. But the real battle is just beginning. We, or those who wanted the reform, some of them are profoundly committed to democracy and human rights, but many of them wanted the reform because they want to pass a whole slew of legislations which will make Israel into a country completely foreign to anything that you pray for and anything that you value. That battle is just beginning. Where are you going to be? Where's going to be your voice? When your children and grandchildren ask you at this moment, where were you? What are you going to say? Are you going to say, well, it was complicated? I spoke behind the scenes. It was complicated. Or are you going to stand up clearly and declare, Hineni, I am here to fight for the Israel that I believe in. I am here because I refuse to let anybody define for me what Israel is about. And I don't care about demographics because in this new coalition, it is not Haredi demographics, because if the liberal right, liberal center, and liberal left join together, we have a force that will rule Israel for a century. Where are you? My friends, it's time to stand up. Not once, not only through donations. To stand up for you. To stand up for us. There are Israelis who are your partners. When did you have a partner? Almost never. You have one now. Now is your moment. Now is the time to stand up and to make a difference and to say, Hineni, for the country I love. Shabbat Shalom.